Hi folks, this is Dick Harbers coming to you from the Philippines. I've decided to record some of my transcripts due to popular request. People said I'd like to listen to them. Some find it easier to listen than to read. So I'm doing them as a video and you can download them in whatever way you like. And I'm going to start with my first transcript, the metaphor of the mind, a brick wall. This particular story comes from a client I had to see me in my private consultancy practice in Cairns some time ago, when a young woman, mid-30s, came to visit me, referred to me by a friend, but she had no idea what I offered, and but she thought, a friend thought I might better help her. Now, my usual practice is to let the client determine the pace and the content and the direction of the session, particularly the first one, while I use my NLP toolkit and other skills to gain rapport. Because when we allow people to tell their story and we listen empathetically, they feel validated, they feel heard. That's a very large part of gaining rapport. I'm also paying very careful attention to her words, not just the content of what she's saying, but also the voice tones, the pacing of her talking, the volume, the pauses. I'm also watching her non-verbals, facial expressions, her body posture, the directionality of her eye movements, where she's looking, the way her head turns. There's so much non-verbal free information when a person's talking to you that most of us miss. Also, I'm very careful to maintain a non-judgmental attitude, one of curiosity and interest and acceptance. Also, listening very carefully when it might be a useful time to intervene. And then when I do intervene, I need to know how to help her move from one of her sensory systems to another. And I'll explain that later on, why that's important. I also use a very effective notice and thank process, which I discovered from another program that I was doing at some past time, how effective that is. It comes from NLP, and I'll talk about that in another one of these stories. And I follow her lead as her subconscious mind reveals to me her way of representing her reality. And then I use whatever she's bringing to me to help her unconscious mind to update and resolve this issue. So I'm working at the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious mind levels, and then helping her support the updates as they happen. Now, I won't explain all those terms at this stage, but let's take her through the story. So we chatted for quite a while. Well, she chatted. It was more a monologue, really, as I gained rapport. Offering a glass of water, listening intently, using my own warm voice tones, nodding sympathetically, and so on. And as she felt more comfortable, she told me quite a bit about her life, about a 45-minute talk, most of which I did not actually need to know, but she needed to talk, to vent, to feel heard, to feel validated. It was her way of feeling accepted. Now, two things that she mentioned during this 45 minutes stood out. About halfway through the time, she mentioned in passing that when she was about 17 years old, and she was now about 34, she'd been diagnosed with a medical condition. And she didn't specify to me what that condition was. But the condition meant that she would not be able to have children, and that she'd come to terms with that. The second and more immediate issue that came to the forth was that she was very unhappy at work, working in a real estate office. as the only female, was feeling unfulfilled there, was getting nowhere. There was no career prospects, wasn't feeling valued. She may have been experiencing some forms of sexual harassment. Didn't mention that, but back then the Me Too movement hadn't evolved yet. But there were certainly those sorts of activities happening in the workplace. And at one stage, she was getting quite agitated about the situation she was in at work. And she said, look, I feel like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. Now, this is the metaphor of the mind. She felt like she was hitting her head against a brick wall. Now, of course, she wasn't hitting her head against a brick wall. In actual reality, she was there sitting across from me, talking to me. But that was how it felt to her, the experience at work. So that's a time to intervene. So I said to her, I asked her, this brick wall that you feel like you're hitting your head against, what does it look like? She looked puzzled. So I added, well, if it helps, just close your eyes and just tell me this brick wall that you feel like you're hitting your head against, what are the color of the bricks? And she did close her eyes. Now, this is where I accept her reality with curiosity and interest. And I'm also changing her focus from the words that she's talking, the auditory, if you like, the auditory sensory system, which is probably her internal dialogue coming out through external speaking, and her kinesthetical feeling of frustration, annoyance, and even anger about her situation at work. And I shifted her attention to the visual, the color of the bricks. And I did that for a particular purpose. Because one thing NLP has discovered is that it's very hard to have a person change their reality, their inner reality, in the sensory systems that you are aware of. So she's aware of her auditory, talking, her feelings of annoyance and frustration and anger and all that. But she wasn't aware of the visual aspect of this. So as soon as she came up with the metaphor of the mind hitting her head against a brick wall, that gave me an opportunity to shift her into the visual sensory system. Because it's in the sensory system that we're not aware of at the time, when we can access that, that's where change can more easily happen. Because if it could happen in the sensory system that we are aware of, the feelings, we just tell ourselves to feel different, which might work for a little while with willpower, but often the unresolved stuff comes back to remind us. Or we can change the internal dialogue, perhaps through affirmations. And again, that brings up all sorts of resistances often too. And the old dialogue comes back. So I said to her, as I mentioned, as she closed her eyes, what's the color of the bricks? She said, they're yellow bricks, like the ones used in building houses. Some houses in Australia are made of yellow bricks, indeed. So I said, well, good, thank you. Well, keeping your eyes closed, just thank the brick wall that you feel like you're hitting against your head, of showing it's made of yellow house bricks. And when you thank it for showing you that, tell me what happens. Oh, she said, startled, sitting back, still her eyes closed. The brick wall fell over. I said, that's right. So thank the brick wall for falling over. And then notice what happens when you thank it for doing that. She said, oh, the bricks have broken up into large chunks like rubble. I said, that's right. So now thank it for breaking up into chunks of rubble. And what happens when you thank it for doing that? Oh, they're now broken into smaller bits like gravel, like aggregate. And she'd know that, she worked in real estate. Oh, great, that's good, that's right. So thank her for breaking down into gravel, aggregate type sizes. And what happens then? She said, oh, They're forming pebbles, small pebbles, like pebbles you'd use on a pathway. And when you thank the pebbles, the gravel breaking down and small into pebbles, what happens when you thank the pebbles? They're forming a path. So thank the path for forming. What happens then? So the path is winding its way through green fields. So that's right. Thank it for winding its way through green fields. And what happens then? Oh, there's trees forming, growing on both sides of the path. It's a lovely shaded path. Well, thank the trees for growing, giving you that shade along this lovely path, winding its way through the green fields. And what happens then? Well, the path's leading up a gentle hill with some trees and grass. It's very, very nice. So thank the path for leading up a hill. What happens then? So well, I get to the top of the hill. So that's right. When you're at the top of the hill, you thank yourself and the path for allowing you to get to the top of the hill. What happens then? And she said, it's a beautiful sunrise. I said, that's right. And her face was glowing, smiling. Her breathing was relaxed. Her skin tones relaxed. The wrinkles of the anguish and frustration had disappeared. Her physiology had changed from the real estate to the sunrise on a hill automatically. Now notice that I did not ask her to do anything other than notice and thank. That's all I did. And what happened when she thanked? At no stage did I suggest in any way what might or should or would or could happen. All that came from her, not from her conscious awareness, because she was as surprised as anybody else would be, that this is simply happening in her mind. And also allowed her to determine when the process was finished. So after a while of sitting there, just enjoying the sunrise, she opened her eyes, smiling, relaxed, and said, this feels so much better. My future feels much brighter and more promising. I'll keep you informed of what happens in my life, she said, and happily paid my fee and left. Now the talking to me beforehand was about 45 minutes. The process I took her through of noticing and thanking took about 5 minutes, about as long as it just took me now to tell it. So that was a Friday afternoon after work, her work. On Tuesday morning, the following week, she called the office to thank me again and said that on Saturday she'd resigned from her work, from a job at the real estate agent. And she'd started a new job on the Monday morning. That's yesterday, as she called me on Tuesday, where there were career prospects for her in a field that she enjoyed much more. And she's very impressed with how she was treated by the people there and how easily and smoothly the transition went of resigning from a job, finding a new job, and experiencing how so much different that new job was. 6 months later, she called me again to let me know that surprisingly and happily, she was now 3 months pregnant with her first child, which she'd previously been told was medically impossible. So in that particular case, with that particular client, we worked with the metaphor of the mind, merging the metaphor of the mind work with a noticing and thanking process. And I'll talk more about the noticing and thanking process in another one of these recordings. But when the metaphor of the mind was updated, her life changed. And for me, the magic is multifold. For a start, I don't have to try and figure out the suggestions of how to make her life better. She, that is her conscious mind, also does not need to try and figure out how to make her life better, how to update her outlook somehow. Like many other similar cases, her subconscious mind was more than ready and willing to be updated when noticed and thanked. Usually the subconscious mind is waiting for the conscious mind, the conscious ego mind perhaps, become aware and give permission for the change processes to happen. So the process is not driven by willpower. I didn't ask her to make things happen. She, in fact, herself was surprised and delighted by how the changes happened automatically. So, in effect, when we thank ourselves, thank aspects of ourselves, which I basically invite her to do, the aspects that came to her awareness, by thanking, we're sending love, gratitude, and acknowledgement to that facet of ourselves. So it's a love process. So the updating was not driven by willpower, but by love power. It was robust, effortless, and abiding. There was no need to practice things over and over. It just happens. The subconscious was updated by the love power of the unconscious as the conscious mind made the request, noticed it, thanked it, noticed it, thanked it. So the conscious mind, a very specific role to play. The subconscious mind, where the old patterns were there, updated to a new reality, a new metaphor, a new way of living. So my working theory is that the unconscious mind, which I believe to be far more conscious than the conscious ego mind, knows exactly what each step in the process needs to be, and will perform the updating of the subconscious mind gently, lovingly, easily, and elegantly. In my theory, I equate the unconscious mind with our spirit or our being, that inner loving self that resides in all of us. And once it's given permission by the conscious mind, by the free will of the conscious ego mind, it will take the required steps to update the subconscious, which is where most of our unresolved issues are found. So it's really the subconscious is willing to update. The conscious mind is willing to notice, thank, and give by that process, give permission. As the being updates that automatically, naturally, and easily to the next, step by step, in exactly the right way. Now, interestingly, I was watching a video by John Grinder recently, and he also said that we seem to have an inherent program in our system at the unconscious level that desires resolution of unresolved. Our body doesn't want to hurt. Our emotions don't want to be in turmoil. Our internal dialogue doesn't want to be in chaos. But what they are doing is signaling to us through spontaneously operating signals, spontaneously occurring signals, to let us know we're not in harmony, not in balance. So the conscious mind needs to notice those signals and then go through a noticing and thanking process to resolve quite a few of those just in that process. Secondly, I was reading part of Shapiro's book on EDMR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, who also has discovered that the system automatically moves towards resolution. And I've spoken about that in a different post, which I'll also record in due course. So for now, that's probably enough to digest for today. I hope you enjoyed this retelling of the story, and it'll be posted on YouTube and also in my various other Facebook group places. So thanks very much, folks, and until next time, see you later. Bye.